Let's get started. We are at the Mishnah on Kaf Bet, Amud Bet, and let me share my screen. And as a reminder, in the last Mishnah, we learned that we heard that there were a variety of opinions about how certain merits could potentially cause the Sotah waters to be delayed in their effectiveness. And so as a result, even though the woman may have had the improper relations, she would not end up having, she would not die immediately. She would die after a certain number of certain period, potentially 3 years. And so our Mishnah now provides a detailed argument about this particular issue. And then it builds on that to talk about a couple of interesting related, somewhat related items, really not that closely related, but okay. So let's take a look. It's a long Mishnah. So let's go through it carefully, and then we'll do the Gemara, which will essentially prove each of the points in the latter part of the Mishnah and explain that the points in the latter part of the Mishnah. So let's take a look. Rabbi Shimon says, there is no possibility for the positive aspects of your merits to cause a delay in the water's effectiveness. Because if you want to say that the water's effect will have a delay and you won't immediate, and if God forbid the woman had the improper relations, she would not die immediately. Well, then Mada Ata et Hamayim Bifnei Kol Nashim Hashotus. You're going to Mada is from the word from dim. You're going to make less. You're going to diminish the effectiveness of the water, because what's the purpose of this water? The purpose of this water is so that a woman
drink.
They're what?
To drink.
Yes, well, the drink is in order to test the woman. Did she have an affair or not? We don't want her to have an affair, and so we hope she didn't have an affair. But if she did have an affair, then if she drinks this water, she's going to die.
Oh.
So yeah, is right. So the point is that we want her to be afraid of the water. But if in fact, when anybody drinks the water, they see that women will see that the person doesn't die immediately, well, then it's not going to be as effective as a deterrent.
Correct.
And so as a result, so that's one bad thing. And not only that, umotzi es shemra alha tahoros shishasu. And moreover, now you imagine you have this woman, we'll call her Sally. And Sally has, was caught in an improper place with the person that her husband said not to be with, and she's like, "But I didn't do anything. I just happened to be in the same room with him, but we didn't do anything." And so she now drinks, and nothing happens. So what's going to happen? People are going to still say that, oh well, she probably still had the affair, but she had some merits that allowed it not to happen right away. So people, even though she's a kosher woman, she really didn't do anything. So we're going to be talking with Sha'omrim Tameos Hain Elisha Talo Lahen Schus. People are going to say that she slept around, but it just so happened that she had some Torah, some mitzvahs, etc., and she was able to not have to be punished right away. So that was Rabbi Shimon's position. Rabbi Omer, has chus tola b'mayim hama'arin. No, you do get a delay and of merit if in fact you did something, if you did something right. The eino yoledis, the eino mishpachas. But the key is that you don't get the positive benefits of the water. You're not going to have children. You're not going to have. You're not going to, be, more attractive. Ella misnavna v'holechas. Rather, you're going to continue to get more and more going away. You waste away more and more. And you're going to end up dying with the same death, the distended tummy, the terrible effects, And so as a result, we've now addressed each of Rabbi Shimon's concerns. Because what was Rabbi Shimon's concern? Rabbi Shimon's concern number one is that the water won't have an immediate effect, and so people won't actually be afraid of it. But there is an immediate effect. You immediately see that the woman is getting sicker. Now, she's not going to die on you. She's not going to die immediately, but she's still going to not be healthy. On the other hand, and when it comes to the concern that maybe now we're going to see somebody who drank and really was innocent and now she's going to be and people are going to say, well, maybe she was really guilty. You don't need to worry about that, because what's going to happen if she was really innocent? She's going to look beautiful and healthy and wonderful, and she's going to have a child, and so it's going to be obvious immediately. Right. So as a result, we've dealt with both the concerns of Rabbi Shimon, and so as a result, now that is the position of Rebbe, and that's the story in this situation. Okay. And indeed, that is the way the Rambam paskins. And so let's continue on. Now we're going to go back to the mincha offering, and we're going to add a clarification. And the clarification is that if we're going to talk about what happens if something goes wrong with the mincha offering. So nitmes minchasa ad shelo kadsha b'kli. If in fact, so again, as a reminder of the process, she's going to bring the flour with her, then the and all the ingredients with her in her own basket, and then it gets moved to a kli hasharis, to a sanctified basket, and that sanctified basket is going to sanctify the items, and now they're dedicated for the offering. And then the Kohen's going to stick his hand in and take out a palm full, a kamitza, and then that's going to go into another container. And then of course they mix in the oil and they put the lavona on the side, and then the lavona gets moved into the other container, and then it gets put next to the next to the altar, and then eventually gets put on the altar. But when that mixture, when that first stuff is all put into that first holy container, so that's what we're talking about. So until it gets put into that first holy container, so that she's bringing it again in her own basket to begin with. So when before that happens, if it becomes tamei, harehi kechol hamenachos. It's like all menachos that become tamei before they go into the first kli. The tipadeh, it is only sanctified from a monetary perspective, and as a result, if something goes wrong and it becomes tamei, you can redeem it onto money. And so what happens is you redeem the flour onto money. That flour now becomes non-sanctified flour that you could use for any purpose. And that's good because it's tamei, so you can't use it for a holy purpose, but you're still allowed to eat it as long as you don't have, as long as you're not needing to be holy at that particular moment. But once it gets put into the sanctified vessel, so harehi kechol menachos, then again, it's like all other menachos, the tisarif, and now it needs to be burnt because it has gone from just having a monetary sanctification to having a physical sanctification of itself, like a sacrifice, that once the sacrifice actually becomes dedicated as the animal, so then even if it become if it were to become tamei, so as a result, it's going to have to all be burned. There's nothing you can do with it. There's no possibility of redemption. The elu shemin chosehem nisrafim. So now we mentioned the fact that certain minchas have to be burned. So now we're going to go back and talk about the mincha of a sotah and when it will end up being burned, meaning when will it not really be offered as a mincha, but rather just be burned. So ha'omeres tameya ani lacha. If in fact the woman admits, now we're on the top of Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph, if she says, I did have an affair, so as a result, the waters aren't going to test her any longer because she admitted it. Now she doesn't get killed because there were no witnesses, but she's going to need to divorce her husband. And so as a result, there's no more holy water. There's nothing, and therefore the mincha offering doesn't get brought.
She could drink the regular water.
And she could drink regular water, but not sotah water, not the special water to test her. Shabo la edim shehit meya, or if there end up being witnesses that say that she had an affair, in which case there will be a trial and she may actually be put to death. V'omeres eini shosa, or if she says, I'm not going to drink. V'shabala eini rotz lahashkosa, or if the husband says, I don't want you to drink because I don't want you to die, God forbid. Ushabala ba eleha b'derech, or if they had an affair along the way, as you may remember, the husband and the wife, they go to their local court. The local court says, yes, in fact, she is going to be a sotah. And then they have to go all the way to Yerushalayim in order to be tested, in order for the Sanhedrin to also confirm her status. And then the Kohen goes through the process with her. Well, and this is why they're supposed to bring 2 Talmidei Chachamim with them. So that way there's no way that they could have this affair. But if in fact they had an affair beforehand, because they're prohibited. Once the husband has expressed these suspicions about his wife, he's prohibited to have relations with her. And so as a result, if they did have relations, well, then the water's not going to work. And so as a result, it's going to, her sacrifice should not actually be brought as a sacrifice, but rather should just be burned. V'kol hanesuas lekohanim, and in the last category, all the people who are married to Kohanim. Now, this last category is a little bit different because we're going to see that the sacrifice part is brought, but the whole thing ends up being burned because there's not going to be a part that will be eaten by the Kohanim. Okay. All right. So next is so minchosei hen nisrafo. In all of these cases, the mincha offering is burned. So now we're going to give more details about this last case. So Bas Yisrael shenisis lekohen. If you have a regular Jew, the daughter of Yisrael who's married to a Kohen, mincha son nisrefes. Her mincha is going to be burned. The Kohen is shenisis Yisrael. But if a daughter of a Kohen is married to a regular Jew, mincha son ne'acheles, then her mincha offering will be eaten. Okay, because even though she's a Kohen, that doesn't really make a difference. So now that we mentioned this distinction between a Kohen and a Kohenet, we're going to now distinguish other differences between a Kohen and a Kohenet. Okay, so ma bein Kohen leKohenet. So what's the difference between a Kohen and a Kohenet? So we're going to have 4 differences. So difference number 1, minchas Kohenes ne'acheles u'minchas Kohen ein ne'acheles. So again, the mincha of a Kohenet is eaten, but the mincha of a Kohen is not eaten. So Kohenes michalelet, a Kohenet can become permanently prohibited, as Rashi explains in the second narrow line. Kohenet michalelet. Mina truma, she could be prohibited permanently from truma. Umina kahuna, and from ever being the wife of a Kohen. Im nivola lepasul, if in fact she has an affair with somebody to whom that she's not allowed to have an affair. But the Kohen ein mitchalel, but a kosher Kohen cannot become permanently prohibited. Yes, he might be temporarily prohibited if, for example, he marries a divorcee, but he will not be permanently prohibited because as soon as he divorces the divorcee, so then he is going to be again allowed to eat truma. So Kohenet mitama, a Kohenet is allowed to become tameh to the dead, right? But a Kohen's not allowed to become tameh to the dead. Kohen okel b'kodshei kodashim. A Kohen is allowed to eat the sanctified, sacrificial meat, and specifically the sacrificial meat that is considered kodshei kodshim, which needs to be eaten on the Temple Mount, on the temple itself, in the Beit HaMikdash itself. But a Kohenet is not, because they're not because they're not allowed to eat that. Okay, so now that we've distinguished between the male son of a Kohen and the female daughter of a Kohen, the daughter of a Kohen and the son of a Kohen. So now we're going to distinguish between men and women in general. So ma bein ish leisha, what's the difference between a man and a woman? Ha'ish poreya ufores. That when a man has sarat, which is a very relevant thing, given that this week's parsha is Tazria Mitzorah, which deals with primarily sarat, so that's a nice Daf Yomi coincidence. So when the man has tsaras, he has to let his hair grow and he has to tear his garments. But when a woman has tsaras, she does not need to let her hair grow and she does not need to tear her garments. Ha'ish madiris benazir. A man can make his son a nazir. Ha'isha madiris benazir. But a woman cannot make her son a nazir. Ha'ish megaleach al nazirus aviv. A son whose father was a nazir but died after setting the aside korbanot, but before he was able to bring them. So the son is allowed to use those korbanot for his own nizirut. But a daughter, ve'ein ha'isha megalachas al nizirut aviyah. But a daughter is not allowed to do that. Ha'ish mekadesh es bito. A man is allowed to marry off his daughter and do kiddushin for her. But ve'ein ha'isha mekadesh es bita. But a mother is not allowed to do it. Now, it is true, as we saw in various previous Masechtot, that a mother and the brothers, after the father has passed away, in a case of Yisoma, can marry her off. But then when she turns the age of majority, she has the ability to reject the marriage. So it's not a full-fledged marriage. So as a result, so that's what we're saying here, that, a man, when he marries off his daughter, it's a full-fledged marriage. Ha'ish mocher es bito. A man has the ability to sell off his daughter to be a Jewish maidservant, but ve'ein ha'isha mocher es bita. But a woman does not have the ability to do that. Ha'ish niskal arom. A man, if God forbid he is subject to stoning, he is stoned naked. Ve'ein ha'isha niskelas aruma. But a woman is not stoned naked. Ha'ish nasla va'isha ve'ein ha'isha nisles. If after the woman or man are killed by the Beit Din, if it's a man, they hang his body. But if it's a woman, they do not. Ha'ish nimkar b'genevaso. A man can be sold if he steals something and is unable to pay back. Ve'ein ha'isha nimkeres b'genevasa. But a woman, if she steals, is not sold if she's unable to pay things back. So we are going to go through every single one of these distinctions. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit more about the burning of the mincha offering. And it's important to understand something, that when a Kohen brings a mincha offering, and Charlie mentioned this a few days ago in our recording, that I think it was in the recording, when a Kohen brings a mincha offering, the entire offering ends up being burned on the altar, because because essentially we don't want. It seems like I'm making up but it seems like from the Torah that when a Yisrael brings the mincha offering, so then the Kohanim get to eat it. But when a Kohen brings the mincha offering, we don't want the Kohanim to benefit from it. And so as a result, we burn the entire thing. So that's an important rule. So the issue is, now that we have this woman who is bringing the mincha offering because she's a Sotah, but she's married to a Kohen, and the offering is also somewhat belongs to her husband because her possessions effectively belong to him. So as a result, we have two elements that are working here. We have one element that if the husband is a Kohen and brings a mincha offering, it's supposed to all be burned. And we have another element that if it's her offering, well, then her offering can be technically can be eaten. So how do we take this? So let's take a look. And again, our Mishnah said that it's all going to be burned. So now we're going to explain how, again, in the case where the Sotah woman is married to a Kohen. So Tana Rabbanan, Kol hanasuas l'kuhuna, anyone who's married to a kohen, minchosei and nisrafot, their mincha offering must be fully burned. Ketzad, what happens? How are we talking about? Kohenes levia v'Yisraelis shenisis l'kohen. Whether it's the daughter of a kohen, the daughter of a Levi, or the daughter of Yisrael, if she marries a kohen, then ein mincha ne'echelas. Her mincha offering is not going to be eaten. Mipnei sheyesh lo chelik ba, because the husband, who's a kohen, has an interest in it. Ve'ena ola b'kalil, but it can't be all brought up together as one, as just the way you bring up a mincha for a kohen. Because a mincha for a kohen, it appears, doesn't require the kamitza, doesn't require the handful. So again, remember that the pattern is the following. You bring all the ingredients and you put the ingredients in the special holy vessel. And then the kohen takes put with the oil, etc., and you do the separation, and you take from and now the kohen puts his hand into the oily part, and he takes a palmful, and he puts it into another vessel. And then that vessel, and then you put the lavona on top, and you put it next to the altar, and then it gets put on top of the altar, and it all gets burned. And then what's left in that original vessel goes to the kohen. That's the process for an ordinary mincha that's brought by a non-kohen. But if a kohen brings it, there is no kamitza. You just put the whole thing together, and you put the whole thing on the altar, and the whole thing gets burned all at once. But here, we can't do, we have to do parts of each. We need the kamitza because it's the woman's offering and she's not a kohen. And at the same time, we can't have any of the leftovers edible because there's a portion of the sacrifice that is attributable to the kohen. So what happens? So again, ve'ena ola kalil, we can't burn all of it together because she has a portion in it. Ella hakomitz karav ba'atzma. So first you take the komitz, you put it in the other vessel, you do all the things that you're supposed to do with it, and then you put it on the altar and it gets burned. V'hashirayim kravin ba'atzman. And then the rest of it gets burned separately on its own. But now there's a problem. Because if you want to say that it's getting burned on its own, but we have the following. Ikre kan. 1 second, we've got a principle. Kol shehu mimenu leishim, harehu baval taktiru. Anything where you give a portion of it to the altar, you're not allowed to burn the rest. So the problem is now we have this leftover piece, and we have two opposing desires with respect to it. On one hand, we need to burn it because the Kohanim are not allowed to eat it because it's partially attributable to a Kohen. And on the other hand, we can't just burn it because you're not allowed to burn leftovers. Leftovers are not allowed to burn. So, Amar Yehuda Brei de Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. So Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, says the following. So why not just burn it as if it was wood on the altar? So don't have the intention that you're burning it as a sacrifice. Burn it like it was wood, meaning have it help feed the fire, but not as anything special. To Rabbi Eliezer, because we have this teaching of Rabbi Eliezer in a brisa, the Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, l'reach nikoach iatamale. When it comes to the prohibition of bringing the leftovers on the fire, you're not allowed to bring them up as an offering. However, aval atamale l'shum eitzim, you are allowed to bring it up as if it was firewood. So Hanach Rabbi Eliezer. So now the Gemara says, but that works fine. That's great for Rabbi Eliezer. But there's another opinion in that brisa. There's another opinion with respect to the ability to bring it up that says you can't do it. To Islay high svara. He has this reasoning. El derabanan deleislu high svara. My ikalamemer. What are they going to say? According to them, you can't just bring it up as firewood. So the Avdi Lahu Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. So they can do what Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, suggests. Because what does Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, suggest? The Tanya, we have another brisa. And that brisa says, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Omer, Hakometz karev ba'atzmo ba'shirayim mispazrim al beis hadashin. That you bring the kometz. Again, this is now. I'll give you the context of this brisa in a moment, but let's just focus on the wording of it so we understand his idea. You take the kometz. The kometz is offered on the altar, but what happens with the leftovers? You don't burn it. You put it on the ash heap that is right next to the altar. And so as a result, it also won't get eaten. It'll get essentially treated like the rest of that ash heap as essentially trash, but holy trash. And so as a result, we've accomplished the two things that we need to accomplish. We've gotten rid of it, and we've then avoided the Kohanim eating it. Now, this brisa, what's the context of this brisa? The context of this brisa is that there are certain times that there are certain when a person commits a sin, that their offering, their sin offering for that sin is not a simple just bring an animal, just bring a chatas. But rather it's a what's known as a karban ola v'yored. Ola meaning if you have more money, you bring a more substantial one. And if you have less money and you're really poor, you bring a less substantial one. The most substantial is a full-fledged animal. Then you have a bird. Then you have a mincha. So now we're talking about what happens when you have a really poor Kohen who needs to bring this mincha offering. So according to the first opinion that we quoted, Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, what do? You bring the kometz as the kometz, and what's left, you burn as firewood. That's position number one. Position number two that we've mentioned is now this position. You bring the kometz, and what's left, you put on the ash heap. Now, there is a third opinion in that brisa that says that actually you just don't eat it. And so as a result, so there is a third opinion in there that says your Kohen's, that says actually the third opinion just says you burn the whole thing. That you actually can burn the whole thing. And so as a result, we have these three opinions. Now, that third opinion is the rabbi's opinion. And so now we've got to wonder, this is, you're using up, what we're right now we're trying to do is we're trying to answer, well, what do the rabbis do who disagree with Rabbi Eliezer? Well, what have we done? We've just cited the third opinion, which isn't the rabbi's opinion. So how do we still have the question about the rabbis, because the rabbis in the context of the mincha sin offering say that you burn the whole thing. So va'afilu rabbanan. So what do we say about the rabbis in this third opinion? So lo pligi alei de Rabbi Elazar for Rabbi Shimon, that they would disagree with the Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, only in that context of the sin offering. Ela b'minchas chote shel kohanim. They only disagree with him in that mincha offering of the kohanim. But here, in the case of a sotah whose husband is a kohen, then they would agree, devas hakravahi, that in that situation it is fit for bringing the entire sacrifice. Aval baha afilu rabbanan modu. But in this case, even the rabbis would agree. So again, we had in the context of a sin mincha offering, and we're at the top. We're now going at the top of the Kaf Gemel Amabet at the two dots. In the context of a sin mincha offering, we have three possibilities. According to the rabbis, the whole thing gets burned. According to Rabbi Eliezer, the whole thing gets burned, but it doesn't get burned at once. You burn the kometz as the sacrifice, and you burn the rest of it as firewood. Mm-hmm. And then the third opinion, which is the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, he says, no, you don't, that you can't burn the leftovers at all, because the leftovers are leftovers, and you're not allowed to burn leftovers. And we have a general rule about that. So what do you do with it? You sprinkle it onto the ash heap. Okay, and now when it comes to, however, when it comes to the wife of a Kohen who is subject to a mincha offering because she's a Sotah, we drop one of these two opinions. We drop the opinion about burning the whole thing as a sacrifice, and we now have just two versions. Either according to Rebbe Eliezer, you burn the komates as a komates and you burn the rest as firewood, or according to everybody else, you burn the komates as the komates and the rest gets put onto the ash heap. Okay, so now that we've dealt with the mincha and the special case of the mincha of the wife of a Kohen, so now we can go through all the 12 differences that we had in our Mishnah. And we're going to go through them one by one, and it will be very quick because it's very, we say what it is and that's it. And then we move on. And with that, we will finish the chapter and wish everyone a good Shabbat. So Bas Yisrael HaNesua, we had that the daughter of Israel, if she's married to a Kohen, so then her mincha is eaten, but the mincha, meaning that her mincha is not eaten, right? But if a Kohenet is married to a Yisrael, her mincha is eaten. So my taima, what's the reason that a Kohenet married to Yisrael, her mincha is eaten, but a Kohen who's married to a Yisrael, to a Yisraelite, her mincha is not eaten. So the Amar Krav, kol minchas Kohen kalil teyelo teachel. As we saw in Parshas Tzav, that every mincha offering of a Kohen, it will all be burned. It's entirely burned. It is not eaten. So Kohen below Kohenet. Our pasuk says that we're talking about a Kohen, not a Kohenet. All right, so that's answer number one. Kohenet mitchalel, Kohen ein mitchalel. We said that a Kohenet has the possibility of being permanently forbidden to eat truma, but a Kohen does not have that possibility, assuming that he was kosher to begin with. Minalan, how do we know? That he should not cause his children to be profane. Zaro mitchalel, v'hu eino mitchalel. His children have the possibility of being profane. So, for example, if a Kohen marries a Grusha and then has children, marries a divorcee and then has children, those children are chalalim, and therefore they are not considered Kohanim for most purposes. So, v'hu eino mitchalel, but he himself does not. And the fact that a Kohenet can become permanently disqualified, we learned in Maseches Yevamot, is based on the fact that if she cohabits with a man that's forbidden to her, so then she becomes permanently prohibited. So that's category number two. Number three.
There's nothing a Kohen can do wrong to be barred from being able to eat
for himself. He can do something that will bar his children.
No, I know. If he goes completely off the derech and does everything, violates every mitzvah in the world.
Yep. If he does tshuva, he's welcome back.
But if he doesn't do tshuva,
well, if he doesn't do tshuva, as long as he doesn't do tshuva, then he's prohibited. You're absolutely right. When he's actually married to the divorcee, he's not allowed to have truma. Even though the language of this Gemara and the Mishnah suggests that he can't be a halal at all, the Rambam and others make clear that no, it's not that he can't be a halal at all. It's he can't become permanently a halal. Meaning, if he marries a divorcee, but as long as he's married to her, he's not allowed to eat truma. But as soon as that marriage ends, whether she dies or he divorces her, then he's no longer profane and is allowed to eat truma.
What if he got put in nidui or something like that for being a moser? I don't know.
So that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. But the bottom line is that even if we were to say that he would be prohibited in that situation, if he did tshuva and was able to come out, well, then it wouldn't be permanent. The key element here is the permanence associated with it. That's what makes it particularly unique. Because a woman, if she has relations with with somebody that to whom she's not allowed to have relations with, so then she becomes permanently prohibited from eating truma. Okay, kohenes mitama. A kohenet can become tameh. She's allowed to make herself tameh, but he's not allowed to make himself tameh. My time, why is that the case? So Amar Kra and Moral Kohanim b'nei Aaron. We're going to have in a couple of weeks, maybe it's even next week. We have the Parshas Emor where it says that you tell the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, b'nei Aaron, below benot Aaron. So that's the introduction to the restrictions on becoming tameh. So that's how we know that the restrictions are becoming tameh. What's the fourth one? So Kohen ocha b'kachim kodshim, and a Kohen is allowed to eat kachim kodshim, but a Kohenet is not. All the male children are allowed to have kachim kodshim, and obviously that implies not the female children. Okay, so now we did the 4 differences between a Kohen and a Kohenet. Now we do the 8 differences between a man and a woman. Uma bein ish, tanu rabbanan. So we have the following brisa, that in the first category was a mitzora. The mitzora, if he's male, he has to let his hair grow and tear his garment, but a woman does not. So in the parsha, which is this week's parsha, it says ish. It says that a man is afflicted with tsaras. So ein li ela ish. So I might think that all of these rules only apply when a man has tsaras and an ish doesn't get tsaras. But isha minayin, how do I know that an isha can also have tsaras? Keshehu omer b'hatzarua asher bo. We have a generic reference to tsarat being in. Now it says in him bo, but the truth is that it's because we now have a double language. The second language comes to tell us that there are harei kan shnayim. We have 2 different kinds of situations. So as a result, men and women can each become tameh. So ein kan im kain mal tameh lomer ish. Well, then in that case, why did we say in the first category ish in the first place? So le'inyan shalamata. So that's to tell us about the things that are discussed in the next verses, which says ish poreya, which deals with a man letting his hair grow and tearing his garment. And so as a result, that's exactly what we need to. So that applies only to a man and not to a woman. Okay, so that was number 1. Number 2. Ha'ish madir es beno benazir. A man is able to make his son a nazir, but a woman doesn't have the ability. How do I know? So I'm Rabbi Yochanan halacha he benazir. It's just halacha l'Moshe Sinai. There is no reason, and we don't have any specific source for it. This is what we have as our passed down tradition. Similarly, ha'ish megaleach on the ziros aviv, ve'ein ha'ish megalachas on the ziros aviha. Similarly, a man has the ability to use the sacrifices that his father set aside as a nazir, but died before he was able to bring them. But a daughter does not have ability to use those sacrifices for her nazirut. So, and how do we know that? So, I'm Rabbi Yochanan again, halacha he ben nazir. It's also a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Ha'ish mekadesh es bito ve'ein ha'ish mekadesh es bita. A man has the ability to marry off with kedushin his daughter, but a woman does not have that ability. Tiksiv es biti nasati leish hazeh. Right. So in the case in Devarim, where he's expressing concern about the fact that now the husband, I believe, has said that his daughter did not have her betulim. So then he is telling the court, I gave my daughter to this man. So clearly a man has the ability to give the daughter away, but not a woman. Number 5, ha'ish mocher es bito ve'ein ha'isha mocher es bita. A man can sell his daughter, but a woman cannot, because tiksiv v'yichim kor ish et bito. If a man sells his daughter as a maidservant, this is of course not selling it as a full-fledged servant, but selling it as a minor, as a Jewish maidservant, in which case she will either go out when she turns 12, or she will get married to the person who purchased her or that person's son. Ha'ish niskal arom. A man is stoned naked, but a woman is not. So my taima urgamu oso. They should stone him. So my oto what does him imply? Elema oto below ota. Maybe you might think that it implies that only men can be stoned, but not women. But second, though, we know that that's not the case because v'haksiv v'hotzesa es ha'ish hahu o es ha'isha hahi. We have a case in the Torah where it talks about the taking out a man or a woman to be stoned. So that can't be. So rather, ella oto below kisuto, that we say that only he gets stoned, meaning with no other things with him, meaning without his clothing. Below ota, below kisuta, but she does not get stoned without her clothing. Ha'ish nitla ve'ain ha'ishana, that we said that a man gets hanged, but a woman does not. And this we're talking again about after they've been killed, because we don't have hanging as a death penalty in Judaism. So as a result, so my time, why is it that only a man can be hanged and not a woman? So Amar Krav is Alisa also al eight, that you should again, but Talita oto al eight, oto below ota, that you should hang him on the gallows, on the tree, not her. And finally, number 8, the woman cannot be sold for her theft, but a man can be sold for his theft. So my timer, so Amar Kra, the Nimkar, the Genevato, right? That he is sold for his theft. His theft. The Genevato, below Genevata. His theft, but not her theft. Now, you may be thinking, well, one second, aren't there lots of other differences between men and women? I mean, after all, there's one big one that everybody could suggest is the fact that men are chayav in mitzvos aseh shazman grama, whereas women are not. And then what about learning Torah that we dealt with a few, within the last few days? We talked about how women are not chayav in learning Torah, but men are. So Tosos here in the second Tosos on the page cites the Tosefta and notes that in the Tosefta there it gives additional things, and the Rishonim all deal with the fact that there are still things that are missing from both lists, meaning it's not as if each list is complete. But I will note, of course, that we have the principle of Ma Shire to High Shire, that if in fact you have a list, as long as the list is not 100% complete, if you've left off one item, you've probably left off more than one item. And so that is the case here. We've left off several items, and so that is the story. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll pick up with the 4th chapter of Sotah, and I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos all.
Have a great weekend.
Yes.
Looking forward to seeing everybody again on Wednesday.
Hope we get the schedule a day before the Jonah dinner. So.
I don't know when we're going to get the schedule, but we're looking forward. The journal dinner will be on June 11th.
Yeah, we know.
Oh, you know that already?
Yeah.
Oh, well, so that's all I know. I would expect that it'll start at around 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Have a great Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Yes,
Yes, have a good day.